Making gold in New World right now is pretty difficult, so in this video we're going to talk about how the market is changing, what you can do in the future, and what best to farm right now. So let's jump in and talk about it. Now, it won't escape most of you that we have a new event. We have the Springtime Bloom, and of course people are trying to make money doing this, and what they're actually trying to sell are some patterns. So I'm not going to explain the event here, obviously I'm presuming you already know this, but there are two types of patterns. We have these green patterns and we have the orange patterns, the legendary ones. Now the legendary ones are pretty okay because one, they guarantee gear score 600. That means some people are basically trying to do the seasonal challenge where you have to craft 125 legendaries by doing these patterns. However, the actual combination of perks, the fact that it includes physical aversion rather than say elemental aversion, is making them not be top tier. And then you have these green patterns. Now before we talk about this event has sort of been nerfed or buffed, whatever you want to see it, so the event has been made easier. Basically you get more petals from doing the actual event itself. Converting them is now 3 instead of 5 petals. It's a lot easier to get tokens because each turn will now actually give you 10 tokens where it was literally giving you none. It's been absolutely buffed as the player. The event itself sort of nerfed whatever way you want to think about that. It's not really a problem. Now that does mean that there's more patterns than there would have otherwise have been, and there will continue to be more patterns. So the pros of the legendary ones are it's guaranteed 600 gear score. You can get resilient on that third perk maybe about 30% of the time. It's not terrible, but it's sort of like catch up PvP gear. I think it's bind on pick up once you actually craft it. The patterns you can sell obviously, but if you can sell them, fine. Now the green ones are interesting because they are basically like a cheaper timeless shard. You get to pick your stat and you get to pick one perk, but these actually use your gear score when you craft. So if you can only craft 580 stuff, then they're not really useful for you, but if you can craft 595 to 600, then you can try and get legendary. Now I've seen two things that you might want to do with these. One is use them because they are effectively cheaper timeless shards, and then I don't want to call out Duke Sloth because he may be correct, but in Duke Sloth's video he said you might actually want to hold on to them because once we get the gear score increase and the gear rework, then they might be useful, and that might be the case. However, my counter little argument to that right now is that they might not be. Once we get that gear score increase, sure, you will in theory be able to craft gear that is of that level by having the trophies or whatever hell you need at that time, but we are, and it's key, that we are getting a gear rework, a major gear rework at that. They also said that they're going to make crafting less RNG. So the patterns may be useful, but they may not. That is a pure gamble. In the past, I have bought patterns and saved them and stuff like that. You know what I ended up doing with them? Nothing, I just sort of left them in my storage. I could use those effectively like these as cheap timeless shards now, or I can store them and maybe they'll change, maybe they won't. So there's no right answer there. Now that doesn't mean you can't still make money with these. You can save them if you want, but you can still sort of sell them. They are going for a bit of gold. The absolute best time to have done that would have been at launch of the event. The prices then are always insane. If you can grind these events out day one, you will generally be in a better position than say now. Let's just pick one of the patterns at random here, and you can see this one is 48 gold. This one is 145. I don't actually know, and I can't be bothered finding out which one is the best bang for your buck, but that's what you're going to have to do, right? You're going to have to look through all the patterns, the ones that you think are probably good. I think it's probably medium right now, but don't quote me on that. By the way, if you don't know, these little icons here, they tell you what weight it is. So this is 2 out of 3, so that's the medium one. Let's just say I have a look at a medium helm. How much is that one? That's 85 gold. But whilst they've gone down in price because there's more of them, it is easier to farm the event. If you want to do that, do that. There's not that much difference when it comes to tokens. The green patterns are 20 tokens, normal tokens, and the legendary ones, they are effectively 25 because they are 1 premium token, which is 25 plus a vial of Azoth, I think. But just be aware of that. Personally, it's not a market I'm personally trying to move in. You could maybe buy and pick up some of those green ones because of what Duke Sloth said. It's probably not going to cost you all that much gold. Though personally, I think I would even wait. This event is lasting, I think, until the 23rd of May. They'll probably be really, really cheap around the 20th of May. So hold on to them if you like. Nothing's for certain in this life. Speaking about the event ending on the 23rd of May, that will then begin the Fury of the Spriggan. Now, the Fury of the Spriggan, it looks to be, at least on the PTR, it was dropping a lot of Angry Earth gear. A lot of Angry Earth Ward, a lot of Angry Earth Bane. Now again, I don't want to call out other YouTubers because they may end up being right, but I think Lemony, I prefer Lemony, lovely guy by the way, he was saying that basically now might be the time to buy Beast Ward stuff. And you know what? he may be right. But I have a feeling that they're probably going to make the raid boss in season 2. That's probably going to be an Angry Earth boss. I'd sort of heard a rumor it was, but obviously I can't validate that. So for me, instead of buying Beastbane stuff, I wouldn't bother. I would just try and collect some Angry Earth Ward gear here. I wouldn't buy it because you're going to get some in this event. So just do the event, basically. However, if you really want to take a gamble, buy that Beast Ward stuff. However, if they do that, I think 1, people will be angry, and 2, they'll probably introduce a way of getting easier Beast Ward gear in the first place. A little bit like with the Forge from the Empyrean Forge, even though that's a whole thing that we're going to come on to in a minute. There might be a bit of a market, and I'm not necessarily guaranteeing this, it might be worth picking up some Infused Angry Earth coatings now while they're cheap. Once the raid comes out, if it is Angry Earth, then these may go up in price at least for like a day or 2. I don't really know if that's the case, but personally, you know what I'm going to do? You see this 100 here? I'm going to buy 50 of them. And either they'll go up in price or they won't. It is what it is. Probably not worth buying the Beast Ward stuff, but you could craft some just in case. Looks like somebody's here convinced that it is going to be Beast Ward. I don't know. That's a gamble. A lot of this stuff, if you are going to predict something, it is a gamble, so just be aware of that. Now, one thing that isn't a gamble right now, if you want, you can go out and farm these. I believe Reekwater is actually a good place, but I've not actually ever personally farmed them. But it might be worth farming Infused Azoth Water. Sorry, it's not called Infused, it's just called Azoth Water. Now, the reason being is they're worth 6 gold. And that leads on to, again, possibly the raids, etc. But basically, this is one of the reasons that Infused Regen potions are also quite high. But basically, if you want to go ahead and farm Azoth Water, it's like 6-7 gold a pop. Just something I wanted to throw out there because that may be very relevant when we get the raid. If there's a lot of raid attempts, considering they said it's going to be very hard, it might be very important and people might be popping a lot of potions. Now, one thing that is going to happen, it's not really relevant here right now to this conversation, but the play numbers are probably going to drop in May. We had a little bit of a bump from the season pass, and then the question is, what can you do, obviously, right? What happens when the player numbers go down? Well, what you might be tempted to do is buy people's cooldowns now and then sell the materials later, but there's a bit of a problem with that. So instead of actually buying cooldowns or like trying to buy the resources, I would personally just come ahead and try and make your own infused leather, phoenix weave, all that kind of good stuff. Make sure you're doing your daily cooldowns. I think we've been saying that since launch, but it is going to be relevant. You can even sell them right now, to be fair, because some mats are like going insane and I don't really know 100% why. For example, for some reason, Phoenix Weave is 187 gold right now. Asmodeum only 136. Now, I was wrong before and I'll have to, hold my hands up and admit it, but I sort of expected that price to continue to drop for Asmodeum and Phoenix Weave, and I was wrong, and that's the gamble you always take if you listen to somebody who doesn't know the future, and I don't know the future. But my point was in the past, and I'm not going to reiterate too much here, that because of Outpost Rush, people were then upgrading their gear with the Umbral Shards and getting easy legendaries. They were then salvaging that item and they were getting stuff from them like these fragments. So for example, 1 Infused Arcane Fragment and 250 Azoth is actually 1 Phoenix Weave, and we just learned, what, that's 160 gold. But the Infused Arcane Fragments are 105 gold, then you'd need the actual Azoth as well. It's sort of balancing itself out. But that leads on to the point, it might be worth that if you do have some items that I don't think I necessarily do here. Let's say you had an item like this, maybe I already have multiples of these. You could upgrade it, get it into 600. That'd actually cost me 400 Umbral Shards. Then I could salvage it. It's a guarantee that you get the fragment, that's 100 gold. So you're basically selling Umbral Shards for gold if you do stuff like this. It could be very relevant for mutation runners, for example, if you've got a lot of shards. If you're desperate for shards, obviously you're not going to do this. Now, the reason I was wrong is effectively goes back to those patterns. A lot of people are doing the patterns because they want like gear. The meta has changed effectively twice recently. So a lot of people have been crafting, the cost has gone up, but that's why you should do your daily cooldown. And I think on some level, this legendary crafter here, where it's actually where you need to craft 125 tier 5 legendary items, is probably contributing to people actually crafting. So I was a little bit wrong. It's a little bit of a volatile market right now, but just be aware that if you're smart, you can probably try and make some gold either way. Either sell your shards for gold, basically, but not buying an M10, or maybe look at doing your cooldowns and just selling quickly. It also then possibly makes the mats themselves worth farming. The next thing I want to talk about is the flame cores, and again with the season pass there are reasons to actually have flame cores, but flame cores have been generally coming down in price, right? Because obviously the demand for them has come down. You don't really need as many, and they're now cheapest on my server 132. Now you might be tempted to think now's the time that I buy Not really. So they did say that the Empyrean Forge is going to get its buff to flame cores, so there's going to be more flame cores dropping from the Empyrean Forge. Now I don't believe that's actually happened yet, but once that does happen and then there's a mutation that week, the flame cores are going to drop. It's probably that week you want to pick them up. They're probably just going to consistently drop over time, but just be aware of that. Don't go buying them now unless you really need to. Again though, I could be wrong. If you're not lazy like me, what you should definitely be doing is your daily chest runs. There's sort of 2 chest runs I would recommend. Your acid pooled chest runs are just always good. If you've got like a look set with the chitin padding on it, you're pretty sweet, you're pretty set there. You can do that solo, obviously, or you can do the exact like world tour chest runs, but I would recommend touring, I keep forgetting the name of it, is it Atlas? There, because that's where you're going to get a lot of flame cores if you want that. But chest runs, very good, do them daily if you can be bothered. Personally, sort of had enough with chest runs, so I'm not really doing them, but you get chances of golden scarabs, especially in Brimstone Sands, and they sell for I think like 2k still, so yeah, go ahead and do that if you can be bothered. And really the next way is the standard way of making gold is to just farm. There's a variety of different things you can farm. Obviously we've talked about the resources for the tier 5 legendary mats, you can obviously go ahead and do that, but there's other stuff you could farm. You can get prime armadillo meat from some areas in Brimstone Sands. You know, you get your luck up there and you try and get it. You'll get some good gold for it. Look, it's 150 a pop, and it's probably actually more expensive than that because there's only 2 at 150. You can find things like hyssop, reeds, cactuses, just all sorts really. You just need to find something on your server where the value is appropriate to the effort you're going to put in. If I say one thing and the price is too low, then it won't be worth farming. But maybe you go ahead and farm silk threads. Obviously, if you are farming, you want to make sure you've got all the buffs, or the proficiency, you've got your right stat, you've got the music buff. Music's a lot easier to farm now, by the way. Ideally, you have Brimstone Sands Fort, but that's not something you can guarantee. You just want to stack all the buffs you can get, go out and farm, and you can still make pretty decent gold. It's not the most exciting stuff, but it is what you can do, and it's probably the best bet now. Because what has come down in value, M10 runs used to be actually a decent source of making gold. It's not something I personally ever really invested in, but you could basically do your M10 run, and you get a lot of like bind on equipped stuff. You would then sell that gear, and you'd be minted. Now the reason that's come down is because it's a little bit easier to get gear now, because of Outpost Rush and because of like the crafting changes and stuff like that. Gear is not really as valuable as it once was, and the fact that we know that there's going to be a dramatic change to gearing in like 6 months, yeah, gearing's come down in value. So if you do get really good items, it's less valuable to be running M10s basically. Now I've never really participated in this, but there is still the possibility of doing aptitude chests. Like I think you can do aptitude chests when it comes to furnishing. Maybe you're gambling to try and get a human idol and stuff like that. I'm not really au fait with that. I'm not really too familiar with that, so it's not something I'm really going to talk about. But what we've mentioned here, I think sort of just a general chat of what's happening in the market. Hopefully you can try and use some of this to make some gold. But I would say it's actually really difficult to be making gold right now. I actually think it's quite hard. Well, it may not be hard, but it's the hardest it's been for a while because there were some obvious things in the past and some of that's sort of been taken away. Let me know your thoughts about the market going forward. Let me know how you're going to prepare so I can steal all your ideas and buy out the marketplace. Other than that, big shout out to my YouTube members. If you want to come follow me over on Twitch, please go ahead and give me a follow over there. What you should definitely do though is have a most beautiful day. Like and subscribe. Goodbye.